"Oh no, not again," Olivia Parker whispered under her breath as she maneuvered through the bustling airport lobby, juggling her carry-on and a paper cup of steaming coffee. The sudden announcement of her flight cancellation had left her flustered, and the line at the service desk seemed endless, with travelers murmuring complaints all around, yet her focus remained on finding a quiet corner to make a phone call when her path collided with a tall man in a perfectly tailored black suit, the cup tipping from her hand and spilling rich, dark liquid across the front of his crisp jacket. Olivia froze, horror flooding her chest as the liquid spread in a dark stain, the smell of coffee mingling with the sterile air, and she could only mutter apologies as he stood still, his piercing gaze meeting hers, a calm authority emanating from him that seemed to make time slow for a heartbeat. Damian Romano, 38, recognized by those who knew the city's whispers as a man whose presence commanded attention, remained silent, a faint raising of his brow the only acknowledgement of the mishap. Yet there was no anger, only measured observation, and Olivia's hands trembled as she attempted to blot the stain with napkins from her bag, her mind racing with panic and embarrassment while he stood there, his expression unreadable yet somehow captivating, the noise of the airport fading as if the world around them had muted in that instant, and she realized that despite the mess, there was something magnetic about the calm control he exuded, a silent invitation for her attention even as she stammered apologies, her voice barely audible over the ambient hum of travelers, their eyes not on her, but on the subtle tension building between them, the accidental spill transforming a mundane misfortune into a moment charged with unexpected intensity. As Damian finally spoke, his voice smooth, low, and carrying an undercurrent of curiosity rather than reprimand, asking if she was all right, and Olivia, cheeks flushing, nodded while unable to tear her gaze away from the depth in his eyes, feeling a strange mixture of relief and intrigue, the simple act of making amends becoming an unspoken connection, a spark igniting in the midst of spilled coffee and airport chaos. And as they both straightened from the awkward position, Olivia felt a heartbeat of anticipation for what would unfold next, realizing that a single mistake could change the course of an ordinary day into the beginning of something far beyond her expectation, a twist of fate wrapped in the ordinary, a collision of two worlds set against the backdrop of fluorescent lights, rolling suitcases and murmuring travelers. And as she offered a tentative smile, Damian returned it with a hint of enigmatic acknowledgement, the stain forgotten for a moment, leaving only the promise of curiosity and the stirrings of an unexpected bond about to unfold, both unaware that this fleeting encounter would mark the start of a story where ordinary life and extraordinary influence would intertwine, setting the stage for moments of discovery, subtle tension, and the first step into a life neither had anticipated, all sparked by a simple accidental spill. Olivia's hands were still slightly trembling as she stepped back, glancing at Damian Romano who stood calmly, the stain on his suit now merely a memory as his expression held curiosity rather than irritation. The airport buzzed around them with travelers moving in every direction, yet the space between them seemed to stretch into a quiet, suspended bubble, and Olivia's mind raced with questions about this man who seemed impossibly composed, his tailored suit immaculate despite the earlier spill, his presence exuding an understated authority that drew attention even without effort, and she felt a mixture of awe and nervous anticipation, realizing that this encounter could not be dismissed as a fleeting accident. As she hastily adjusted her bag and muttered another apology, the words catching slightly in her throat, while Damian, observing her carefully, tilted his head slightly and offered a reassuring tone, asking if she had somewhere to go or if she needed assistance, his voice carrying a warmth and subtle intrigue that contrasted with the controlled exterior of a man known in whispers as the city's formidable figure. And Olivia, caught between relief and curiosity, nodded and murmured that she had been trying to catch a ride after her cancelled flight, and Damian gestured toward a sleek black car parked nearby, suggesting that she could join him, and for a moment disbelief swept through her, the idea of entering a stranger's vehicle normally terrifying, yet something in his calm demeanor reassured her, his gaze steady and observant, noting her hesitation without pressing, the air charged with the quiet tension of an unexpected choice, and, as she took tentative steps toward the car, Damian moved slightly to open the door, the subtle politeness juxtaposed with the commanding aura that seemed to radiate from him effortlessly, and as Olivia settled inside, adjusting her jacket and smoothing her hair, she realized that the ordinary chaos of an airport delay had unexpectedly led her into a scenario where trust, curiosity, and caution intermingled, The vehicle's leather interior clean and understated, ambient lighting soft against the evening shadows, and the quiet hum of the engine began as Damien started the drive, the city lights flickering past in a rhythmic blur, and conversation started with tentative questions, his interest apparent yet unintrusive, probing gently into her day, her travels, and the mishap that had brought them together, each response measured, with pauses that allowed both to absorb the subtle dynamics forming, the ordinary becoming extraordinary through a series of small gestures, shared glances, and a growing sense of connection that neither had anticipated, the tension of the earlier spill transforming into a cautious intrigue, and Olivia felt a mixture of excitement and anxiety, the ride stretching into a quiet journey where every word and glance carried unspoken meaning, setting the stage for a developing bond that would challenge her assumptions, draw her attention in unexpected ways, and shift the rhythm of her day from mundane to a series of moments tinged with curiosity, anticipation, and the unmistakable pull of an encounter neither could have planned. The city lights stretched across the windows like rivers of gold and silver, blurring into long reflections as the car moved smoothly through the evening traffic. Olivia Parker sat quietly in the passenger seat, her fingers resting on the strap of her bag, while her thoughts raced far faster than the vehicle itself. Every instinct told her that accepting a ride from a stranger should have felt reckless. Instead, she felt strangely calm. Damien Romano drove with effortless confidence, one hand resting lightly on the steering wheel, his attention divided perfectly between the road ahead and the subtle details around him. It was the kind of awareness that could not be learned overnight. Came from experience, from responsibility, from a life she suspected was very different from her own. The soft hum of the engine filled the silence between them. It was not an uncomfortable silence. It felt deliberate, like neither of them wanted to rush whatever was unfolding. Olivia glanced toward him. His expression remained composed, calm, unreadable. Yet there was something surprisingly approachable beneath the polished exterior. Something human. "You have not asked many questions," Damien said suddenly. His voice was low and steady. Olivia laughed softly. "I think I have been too busy wondering how I ended up here." A faint smile touched the corner of his mouth. "And what conclusion have you reached?" She looked out the window. "That today has been very strange." This time his smile lingered a little longer. "I can agree with that." The conversation paused again, but the tension felt lighter now. More natural. They stopped at a red light. Across the street, a small family hurried beneath umbrellas while a street musician packed away his equipment before the approaching rain could reach him. Olivia watched them disappear into the crowd. "What do you do?" she finally asked. Damien's eyes remained on the traffic signal. "Business." The answer was immediate. Simple. Too simple. Olivia smiled. "That sounds suspiciously vague." For the first time, a genuine laugh escaped him. It was brief, but it transformed his entire face. "Perhaps it is." She found herself smiling back. The light turned green. They continued moving through the city. The atmosphere inside the car shifted almost imperceptibly. The awkwardness that existed after the coffee accident had begun to disappear. In its place was curiosity. Real curiosity. Olivia noticed how easily Damien listened. He never interrupted, never looked distracted. When she spoke about her job, he paid attention. When she mentioned her younger sister living in Boston, he remembered her name only minutes later. Small details, yet somehow they mattered. Most people listened only long enough to respond. Damien listened to understand. That realization unsettled her more than his expensive suit or mysterious confidence ever could. A few moments later, his phone vibrated through the vehicle's speaker system. A name flashed briefly across the dashboard screen before disappearing. Damien pressed a button. "Yes," he answered. A man's voice immediately filled the cabin. "Everything is prepared. The meeting has been moved to tomorrow morning." Damien's expression never changed. "Good. The board agreed to your terms." "I expected they would." There was a pause. "Will you need additional security?" Olivia noticed the question instantly. "Security?" Damien glanced briefly toward her before answering. "No." The call ended. Silence returned. Yet something had changed. Olivia stared through the windshield. Board meetings. Security. People reporting directly to him. The pieces were beginning to form a picture she could not quite understand. Beside her sat a man who seemed perfectly comfortable making decisions that affected countless people. A man who carried authority without demanding attention. And as the city lights reflected across the glass once more, Olivia realized her curiosity was no longer focused on the strange day she had experienced. It was focused entirely on the man sitting beside her. Olivia stepped out of the car, the evening air brushing against her face, carrying a mix of city noise and distant laughter that felt alive and almost comforting. She adjusted the strap of her bag and noticed how effortlessly Damian Romano moved beside her, his posture confident yet relaxed, every step measured, as though he owned every shadow and light in the space they walked through. The hotel lobby loomed ahead, warm light spilling from its tall windows, highlighting the marble floors and gilded fixtures that reflected an elegance Olivia was both unaccustomed to and intrigued by. She could feel the subtle shift in energy as they entered. Staff straightened, glances lingered, whispers barely audible as they passed. Damian did not break stride. He walked with a sense of authority that demanded respect without needing to assert it verbally. Olivia followed, her heart still racing from the strange comfort she felt in his presence, a contrast to the day's earlier chaos. As they approached the reception, a polite smile from the concierge was met with Damian's brief nod. Enough to command attention without a single word. Olivia's eyes scanned the grand space, noting the opulent chandelier above, the soft murmur of guests mingling in the background, and the gentle hum of elevators moving up and down. She felt the weight of her curiosity, wondering what brought a man like Damian to this place at this hour, and why fate seemed to intertwine their paths in such an unexpected way. They moved toward a quiet corner, where Damian gestured for her to sit while he made a quick phone call. Olivia's gaze wandered across the room, noticing small details, the arrangement of flowers in tall vases, the carefully placed furniture that invited both comfort and discretion, and the subtle nods of recognition from staff who seemed to know him well. Damian returned, his expression calm, almost unreadable, yet there was a slight softness in his eyes when he looked at her. "Everything is set for tomorrow," he said, his voice low and measured. Olivia nodded, understanding that whatever decisions had been made today would shape events far beyond what she could imagine. She sipped her coffee, trying to steady her thoughts, and noticed the way Damian observed her, not intrusively, but with an attention that made her feel seen in a way no stranger had ever done. It was a strange mix of comfort and caution, a delicate balance that left her both intrigued and apprehensive. Outside, the city lights flickered against the night sky, and the soft sounds of distant traffic filled the air, grounding her in the moment. For the first time, Olivia felt the weight of possibility, realizing that a single day, a single encounter, could alter the trajectory of her life in ways she had never considered. Damian's presence beside her was both reassuring and enigmatic, a silent promise that the night held more than just uncertainty. It held a story waiting to unfold, one that neither of them could yet predict, but that would change everything. The lobby's golden glow wrapped around them as they prepared to move forward, each step measured, each glance deliberate, weaving the first threads of a connection that neither had anticipated but both would soon come to understand. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime, and Olivia Parker found herself following Damian Romano through a private corridor that felt worlds away from the crowded airport where their paths had first crossed only hours earlier. The thick carpet softened every footstep. Warm lighting reflected across polished wood panels. Large windows overlooked the city skyline, where thousands of lights shimmered beneath the darkening sky like scattered stars. Everything felt quiet, controlled, intentional. Damian walked beside her without rushing, giving her space to absorb her surroundings. It was a small gesture, but she noticed it. He seemed to understand that some moments needed silence more than conversation. They entered a private lounge overlooking the city. Floor-to-ceiling windows stretched across the room. A fireplace glowed softly against one wall. The scent of cedar and fresh coffee lingered in the air. Olivia paused near the glass, staring down at the endless maze of streets below. Cars moved like streams of light. People hurried between buildings. Somewhere beneath all of that movement was the ordinary world she understood. Yet standing here beside Damian felt like stepping into something entirely different. "You seem surprised," he said. His voice carried the same calm confidence she had noticed since the moment they met. Olivia smiled softly. I am trying to understand how someone can make an airport delay feel like the beginning of a movie. A faint laugh escaped him. It was genuine. Brief, but genuine. That was not my
intention.
Then what was? She asked. Damien considered the question. His reflection appeared beside hers in the glass. Sometimes unusual things happen. Most people ignore them. I prefer to pay attention. The answer lingered in her thoughts. Sounded simple, yet somehow it explained everything. He had noticed her when others would not have. He had stopped when others would have continued walking. He had chosen kindness when convenience would have been easier. An employee entered quietly carrying coffee and light refreshments before disappearing again without interrupting the atmosphere. Olivia watched the interaction carefully. Everyone seemed to know Damien. More importantly, everyone seemed to respect him. Not out of fear. Out of certainty. As though his presence alone reassured them that everything was under control. She picked up a cup and settled into one of the chairs near the windows. Damien sat across from her. For the first time all evening, neither felt rushed by schedules or distractions. The conversation became easier. More personal. Olivia spoke about growing up in Ohio, about helping her mother after her father passed away years earlier, about working hard to build a stable life. Damien listened carefully. He never checked his phone. Never looked away. Every detail mattered to him. When she finished speaking, he remained quiet for a moment. You carry responsibility well, he finally said. The observation surprised her. How can you tell? Because you never mention what others owe you. Only what you owe them. Olivia looked down at her coffee. No one had ever noticed that before. Outside, the city lights grew brighter as darkness settled across the skyline. Inside, the room felt warmer. More intimate. Not because of romance. Because of understanding. For the first time since meeting Damien, Olivia began to see beyond the expensive suit and quiet authority. She saw someone observant, thoughtful, someone who paid attention to people when everyone else paid attention to status. Then her eyes landed on a financial magazine resting on a nearby table. A photograph on the cover immediately caught her attention. Her breath paused. The man standing beside several powerful executives looked remarkably familiar. Slowly, she reached for the magazine. As she turned it toward herself, she saw the name beneath the photograph.
Damian Romano.
And suddenly, she realized the stranger sitting across from her was far more influential than she had ever imagined. The next morning arrived with an unexpected calm. Olivia Parker woke to sunlight streaming softly through the hotel curtains, casting a warm glow across the room. The events of the previous evening lingered in her mind, not as a dream, but as a vivid reality she could not shake. The memory of Damien Romano's attentive gaze, the way he had listened without judgment, and the subtle acknowledgement of her resilience played repeatedly in her thoughts. She moved through the suite, quietly preparing herself for the day, carefully selecting a modest but professional outfit, ensuring that her appearance reflected confidence and composure, mindful of the impression she might leave on anyone she met. As she sipped her morning coffee, her phone buzzed with a message from Damien, brief and precise. Meet me in the lobby at 9. No rus. Even in this simple communication, there was a sense of consideration and control that set him apart from anyone she had ever encountered. Olivia felt a mixture of anticipation and unease, recognizing that her ordinary world was beginning to intersect with one far more intricate and commanding than she had previously known. When she descended to the lobby, Damien was already there, standing with relaxed yet deliberate posture, eyes scanning the room with an alert calm. He smiled upon seeing her, a small but genuine gesture that communicated reassurance and shared understanding. Good morning, he said, voice steady yet inviting, the kind of tone that could command attention without demanding it. Olivia returned the greeting, noticing the subtle details of his attire, the meticulous care with which he presented himself, and the understated authority that seemed inherent in every movement. As they stepped outside, the city greeted them with its usual rhythm, bustling streets, honking cars, and the faint hum of urban life creating a backdrop that seemed almost mundane compared to the charged tension between them. Damien guided her to a sleek black car waiting at the curb, doors opening with quiet precision, interior illuminated by soft ambient lighting, creating a sense of controlled privacy. As they drove through the city streets, Olivia took in the scenery, the familiar landscapes now framed by an awareness of a larger world in which power, observation, and influence operated subtly but decisively. Conversation between them flowed naturally, alternating between casual remarks about mundane events and more nuanced exchanges that hinted at the complexities underlying Damien's life. He shared insights about the city, the delicate balance of decisions that could affect many people, and the responsibilities he carried, always careful to maintain respect for her perspective and presence. Olivia listened intently, absorbing details while recognizing the careful calibration in every word he chose, aware that she was witnessing both authenticity and control in a singular combination. They arrived at a high-rise office, the building commanding in its stature, and Damien guided her inside with assurance, gestures indicating the pathways and the expected flow of visitors. Inside, the environment was professional, sophisticated, yet not intimidating, reflecting Damien's ability to balance authority with discretion. The receptionist acknowledged him with a brief nod, and Olivia noted the respect that accompanied recognition of his presence. They walked to an elevator that would take them higher into the building, and Damien's hand briefly brushed hers in a casual but deliberate reassurance, signaling both awareness and attentiveness to her comfort. As the elevator doors closed, Olivia felt the reality of this new experience settling in. Her world was expanding, interactions were deepening, and every detail, from the soft lighting to Damien's calm confidence, contributed to a growing understanding that her ordinary expectations were being reshaped into something entirely new and profoundly engaging. The elevator rose smoothly toward the upper floors, and Olivia Parker watched the illuminated numbers change one by one while a strange mixture of anticipation and uncertainty settled inside her. The polished metal walls reflected fragments of the morning light, creating shifting patterns that seemed almost unreal. Beside her, Damien Romano stood quietly with his hands relaxed at his sides, his attention focused somewhere beyond the elevator doors. He looked completely at ease, as though every moment of the day had already been carefully considered long before it happened. When the doors finally opened, Olivia found herself stepping into an executive floor unlike anything she had ever seen. Floor-to-ceiling windows wrapped around the corridor. Soft natural light spilled across dark wood panels and polished stone floors. Employees moved with purpose, yet the atmosphere remained calm and organized. No one appeared rushed. No one appeared uncertain. It felt like entering a world built on precision. As they walked through the corridor, several people greeted Damien respectfully. Some nodded. Others offered brief smiles. What caught Olivia's attention was not their respect. It was their trust. Every interaction suggested confidence in his leadership rather than obligation. Damien acknowledged each person by name. He remembered details about projects, families, and schedules without hesitation. The realization surprised her. Power was not what impressed her. Attention was. They eventually entered a spacious conference room overlooking the city skyline. A long table occupied the center of the room. Screens displayed charts, schedules, and reports. Several executives were already waiting. Conversations paused the moment Damien entered. Olivia instinctively expected tension. Instead, she witnessed something entirely different. Damien greeted everyone calmly and invited discussion immediately. Ideas were exchanged. Questions were encouraged. Problems were examined carefully. No one seemed afraid to speak honestly. Olivia sat quietly near the window, observing everything. The image she had formed of him from headlines and whispered rumors continued to shift. The man she saw now was patient, focused, deliberate, more interested in solutions than authority. Hours seemed to pass quickly. Sunlight moved across the conference table, while the city stretched endlessly beyond the glass. During a brief break, Olivia stepped toward the windows. The view was breathtaking. Thousands of buildings extended toward the horizon beneath a clear blue sky. Beautiful, isn't it? Damien's voice came from beside her. She smiled. It is. He folded his arms comfortably. Most people come up here and see power. Olivia glanced at him. What do you see? His eyes remained on the skyline. Responsibility. The answer lingered in the silence between them. She believed him. Not because of what he said. Because of how he said it. There was no performance. No attempt to impress her. Only honesty. For the first time since they met, Olivia felt her caution beginning to soften. Curiosity remained. Questions remained. But fear was fading. As the afternoon continued, she noticed another pattern. Despite the demands placed upon him, Damien never seemed distracted when speaking directly to someone. Whether addressing an executive, an assistant, or a maintenance employee passing through the hallway, he offered the same attention and respect. It was a quality she rarely encountered. Later, as the meeting concluded and employees gradually left the room, Olivia found herself alone with him once more. The city beyond the windows had begun shifting toward evening colors. Golden sunlight reflected across the glass towers outside. Damien gathered a few documents before turning toward her. "You have been very quiet today," he observed. Olivia laughed softly. "I have been learning." A faint smile appeared on his face. "And what have you learned?" She considered the question carefully. Then she met his eyes. "That you are not the person I expected." For a brief moment neither looked away. And somehow, that simple exchange felt far more important than either of them was willing to admit. As the late afternoon sun dipped below the horizon, casting long golden shadows across the streets, Olivia Parker found herself walking beside Damien Romano through the quiet avenues of the city, the air filled with the subtle hum of evening life. Their steps were in sync, yet each carried its own unspoken thoughts, a tension of curiosity and caution lingering between them. They paused at a small, elegant cafe, where warm lights spilled onto the pavement and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the crisp evening air, and Damien gestured toward an empty table outside, his expression calm, inviting, and impossibly composed, as though he anticipated every movement in the surrounding world. Olivia hesitated briefly, her mind replaying the day's earlier revelations about his character, the way he listened, the way he valued attention and respect over authority, and yet now in the twilight, she wondered how much of that demeanor was natural and how much was carefully constructed. They sat, and Damien ordered quietly, his eyes never leaving hers, a subtle intensity radiating from him that was simultaneously compelling and intimidating. She noticed the ease with which he commanded the attention of the staff and the subtle respect in every nod he received from passers-by, a reflection not of fear, but of an acknowledged presence that demanded recognition. Conversation flowed gently at first, casual remarks about the city, about the colors of the sky, and then shifted toward deeper subjects, Olivia cautiously probing while Damien responded with deliberate thoughtfulness, revealing glimpses of a man who managed a complex world with precision yet retained a genuine curiosity about the people around him. As the cafe lights flickered on and shadows grew longer, Olivia's attention was drawn to the small details, the way Damien's hand rested lightly on the table, the way his gaze lingered on the skyline visible between the buildings, and how even in a relaxed setting, his awareness never waned, an alertness that was both protective and commanding. A sudden sound from a nearby street, a car door closing a distant horn, caused her to glance around, and Damien's hand brushed lightly against hers, a gesture of reassurance that conveyed safety without words, prompting a quiet acknowledgement in her heart that this moment, though ordinary in its setting, was extraordinary in the connection it fostered. They shared stories, laughed softly, and for a brief period, the weight of expectations and the intrigue of power seemed suspended, replaced by a fragile intimacy born from mutual understanding, a recognition that despite the differences in their worlds, they could inhabit the same space without pretense. As darkness deepened, the cafe staff began closing down for the night, the warm glow of the lights accentuating the silhouettes of trees and lampposts, and Olivia realized that her perception of Damien had shifted subtly but profoundly. He was no longer only the composed, powerful figure she had encountered in meetings and corridors, but a man capable of gentleness, of attention to small gestures, of creating comfort without diminishing authority. They rose to leave, the evening breeze cool against their faces, and as they walked back toward the city streets illuminated by the emerging nightlife, Olivia felt a tentative trust forming, a delicate balance between awe and familiarity, understanding that the unfolding story between them had only just begun, and that each choice, each interaction, carried the potential to transform the paths they were traversing in ways neither could have predicted, yet both were silently eager to explore. Together, the city seemed quieter as the night settled fully around them, the glow of streetlights reflecting across polished sidewalks and glass towers while Olivia Parker walked beside Damien Romano, without feeling the uncertainty that had followed her since the airport. The evening air carried a gentle coolness, and for the first time in a very long while, her thoughts felt clear. They stopped near a riverside promenade where the water mirrored the lights of the skyline, turning the surface into a ribbon of gold and silver stretching into the distance. Neither spoke immediately. The silence felt comfortable now, earned through hours of conversation, observation, and unexpected understanding. Olivia rested her hands against the railing and looked out across the water. "If someone had told me yesterday that I would end up here, I would have laughed," she said softly. Damien stood beside her, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "Most important things begin that way," he replied. She smiled. The answer sounded exactly like something he would say. For a moment she simply watched the reflections move across the river, replaying everything that had happened. A delayed flight, a spilled cup of coffee, a chance encounter. Every event had seemed insignificant when it happened, yet together they had created something impossible to ignore. Damien turned toward her slightly. "What happens next?" he asked. The question surprised her. Not because he asked it, but because he genuinely seemed interested in her answer. Olivia looked at him carefully. Throughout the day she had seen the influence people attributed to him. She had witnessed the respect that followed him into every room. She had learned that beneath the reputation and authority was someone who listened more than he spoke and observed more than he revealed. "I go back to my life," she answered honestly. "My job. My apartment. My responsibilities." Damien nodded. "Good." She laughed softly. "That is not the answer most people would give. Most people spend too much time trying to become someone else." His expression softened. "You already know who you are." The words settled deep within her. They carried more meaning than any compliment could have. Across the river, a ferry moved slowly through the darkness, its lights drifting across the water like floating stars. Olivia realized that Damien had never once tried to impress her. He never exaggerated, never demanded attention. The most powerful thing about him was not his influence. It was his certainty. He knew exactly who he was. And somehow, being around him made her want to become more certain of herself as well. A few minutes later they began walking again. The streets had grown quieter. Storefronts glowed warmly behind large windows. Conversations drifted from nearby restaurants. Ordinary life continued around them, yet everything felt different than it had the day before. When they finally reached the hotel entrance, both slowed instinctively. Neither seemed eager to end the evening. Damien looked toward her. "Your flight leaves tomorrow afternoon." Olivia nodded. "I know. A car will take you to the airport." She smiled. "You really do plan everything." A faint smile appeared on his face. "Not everything." Their eyes met. For a brief moment, the noise of the city seemed to disappear. There were no dramatic promises. No declarations. Only understanding. Olivia realized that some people entered your life loudly and changed nothing. Others arrived quietly and altered your entire perspective. As she stepped into the hotel lobby and glanced back one final time, Damien remained standing beneath the city lights, calm and confident as ever. And although neither of them knew exactly what the future would hold, both understood one simple truth. A single accidental moment had become the beginning of a story neither of them would ever forget.